Okay, it is 9:30. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. 3 Signs Your SaaS Company is Ready to Graduate to the Next Level Accounting System. I'm Kevin Shives, your host and also a partner in the consulting group here at Sensiba. My responsibilities include helping our clients by deploying our resources and expertise in internal audit, SOX, and our technology offerings. I've been in this role for about 6 years. With me today is Tom Aker. Tom is our senior solutions consultant. He has extensive experience in accounting and ERPs. He is specifically a subject matter expert with cloud-based financial systems. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you.
Also joining us today is Mel Fulbert. Mel is a senior systems implementation specialist. She is a subject matter expert with Sage Intacct, including the advanced contracts module. A little later, Mel will be walking us through a Sage Intacct demo environment to provide an overview of how this system can vastly improve managing and accounting for SaaS contracts. Welcome, Mel.
Thank you.
All right. Well, before we get started, I want to give just a brief overview of our firm. SSF is a full-service accounting, consulting, and advisory firm. We have 4 offices in Northern California, and we serve clients across the U.S. We've been around more than 40 years at this point. We're also one of a handful of accounting firms that is a B Corp certified, that has a B Corp certification. That indicates we strive to balance purpose and profits. You can find out more about that on our website at ssfllp.com. You know, there's been a lot of interest in the B Corp certification, especially with companies that focus on sustainability. The takeaway here is just know that we have resources in that area. And if you have interest in pursuing that certification and would like some guidance, please reach out. And then specifically with regard to our consulting group, just a little bit more about that. We, on our technology solutions, you know, this is where we partner with best-in-class software publishers to help our clients manage their businesses in a more effective and efficient way. Our current platforms are shown in the bottom right-hand corner of this slide. Similarly, with our internal audit and SOX offerings, we help our clients design, document, test, and evaluate, and ultimately improve their processes and procedures. This can be an engagement as small as documenting a payroll process or as large as implementing full SOX for a newly public company. With outsourced accounting, just like the service name implies, clients engage with us to perform some or all of their accounting function so they can spend more time focusing on their core business. Also under this umbrella, we provide family office support and advisory. If you have questions about any of these or want to know more, please reach out directly to me. My contact information will be on the last slide in this deck, and we will be distributing this deck at the end of the call. Agenda-wise, so our agenda today. If you're new to SaaS or even a veteran, you know there are a lot of acronyms used in this space. We'll define a few terms up front to ensure that we are all tracking together. Next, we'll walk through a typical growth path for a SaaS company and touch on some common challenges that come along with that growth. Then we'll spend a few minutes providing an overview of the Sage Intacct platform and how it addresses challenges in the SaaS accounting and reporting space. And of course, as the webinar title indicates, we will be sharing the 3 signs indicating you need to upgrade your accounting system. Mel will be jumping in and out of a demo environment along the way to illustrate a solution for the 3 signs and other critical elements of SaaS accounting. Also, as the webinar is CPE eligible, we will have 3 polling questions during the presentation. Okay, let's go ahead and dive in. Tom, why don't you take us through the key terms?
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. So we know that our attendees are familiar with the finance terms of the SaaS business, but we wanted to just make sure that we're not plunging ahead without at least establishing these common terms. So ASC 606 is, of course, a standard that has been in effect for a few years now, so everyone should be up to speed on it in terms of revenue recognition. It spans not just, of course, subscription software businesses, but every kind of business and nonprofit. So we will be hitting on the compliance requirements of ASC 606. One of those terms in ASC 606 that will be coming up is the MEA, or multi-element arrangement. So we'll be saying MEA. We just want to keep in mind that that's a multi-element arrangement. And of course, we will be talking about waterfalls and the reports that are needed to see that distribution of revenue, and distinguishing between monthly recurring revenue and annual recurring revenue in terms of those metrics that investors need to see and that management needs to gear their strategies to. Of course, recognized revenue is a completely different thing from billed revenue, especially in a subscription business with different terms. So we will be talking throughout this presentation about those differences and how they create a burden for accounting as an organization grows. The next slide, Keith. So on the topic of growth, from the bottom to the top here, we're looking at different stages from that seed growth, that seed funding, to the sale or exit of some kind. And of course, this changes over time, where a startup with 10 ecstatic customers needs to worry about primarily maintaining their cash flow and managing their run rate, that the complications start to build up more around Series A, Series B, where the growth rate is so high and the revenue model needs to be tuned to fit the requirements to get that CMRR per customer built up. And somewhere in the Series A to Series B range is where it's likely that an audit is going to be required. And so we want to establish that we have audit-ready financials from the beginning so that we're ready for that audit requirement when it comes along. So some of the common challenges that we have heard specifically from customers that are struggling with this growth is, in the case of a subscription business that's building on a lot of smaller customers, the recurring revenues or the recurring invoicing becomes burdensome just to keep up with that volume. So that's one challenge. The billing, especially when your organization is building the business on larger enterprise sales, there's a lot of innovative pricing. The sales team keeps coming up with new ways to price and bill, and we need to be able to create a flexible way to keep track of that without managing all the revenue in spreadsheets. So you see that other quote there, a couple thousand revenue schedules. It can accelerate quickly from a couple hundred to a couple thousand with these growth rates. So it's important to have that infrastructure in place so that you're not pulling all-nighters just to get the reports together. And of course, being able to forecast the cash, forecast the growth, and get your pricing right to beat the competition is the key to making it through that growth curve.
Okay, so what is ASC 606? What's the model? And how does this affect us using QuickBooks, and why we need to transition into Intacct? So the reason that this pronouncement came about is because they needed a framework to recognize revenue consistently across industries and across companies. There was a lot of variation in the ways that businesses were going about this. And that's where, again, that MEA concept comes in, of bundling of products. We're putting multiple products into one line. So we're not really getting insight into how those all interact and how they all affect each other. So we're trying to streamline data comparison across industries. So, for your board of directors or if you're looking for funding from investors, it's all streamlined across all industries. So the model is we need to identify our contract with the customer. So this is, we're shifting from multiple sources of data into one single source of data, one contract, one point where we enter all of our data. And we have to identify our performance obligations. So understanding what are our products, how many contract lines do we need, debundling those products, and then allocating our fair value across all of them. And sometimes even determining the transaction price can be difficult, especially in QuickBooks or other small ERP systems. That's when we get into, maybe I need a price list for every customer that I have. Maybe I need, 5 different price lists. It's just not possible within QuickBooks. So that's why we need to shift to a more sophisticated system here. And recognizing revenue. So not only when do we need to recognize revenue, but how do we need to recognize revenue? When are we meeting those performance obligations? Next slide, please. So this is where Intacct comes in, right? And what's really great about our system is we're #1 in the space, and Sage Intacct, all of their code, this is a fun fact that I love about the contracts module, a third of the code that Intacct writes is specifically only for the contracts module. So this is something that was built from the ground up. They're constantly making modifications, constantly coming out with updates to new releases. We're endorsed by the AICPA. You can run, billing, revenue, all in one place, housed in the same location, up to the minute, accurate data. All right, next slide, please. All right, we're on to our first slide. #1, then time to graduate. We don't know where our business stands. As Tom said, we're spending hours, maybe even days at month end, putting together recs, putting together financial statements. There's no time to even consider KPIs. I can't make any data-driven decisions because I have no idea what the data is telling me, because I don't have time to look into that kind of stuff. I can't speak to, what my customer values. Why are we having churn? What is the contract lifecycle? Next slide, please. And part of why this is an issue is because we don't have any insight into what we call the 6 C's of our SaaS metrics, right? So our monthly recurring revenue and the annualization of that. What's my customer acquisition cost? The lifetime value of that customer? What does my cash flow look like in terms of payment from these customers? And what's my customer count and how does it fluctuate through time? All right, so from here, let's hop into Intacct. So can you guys see my screen? We're good? Okay. So what Intacct can offer you, and what's really great here, is our digital board book. This is specifically built for SaaS companies based on the needs that SaaS companies have and the metrics that they look at. So here we're talking about the 6 C's that we just discussed. Here you have, you have monthly recurring revenue broken down in a few ways. So here it is by customer. Here's my annualized recurring revenue. Here's what's new. And here's just monthly recurring revenue that I have. My customer acquisition costs looks like it's up. Why is it up? A lot of times, again, when you're spending so much time in spreadsheets and combining multiple sources of data, we don't even have time to calculate these numbers. It's near impossible to think about. How much is it costing me to bring on new customers? The lifetime value of that customer. What's my cash flow, payback in months? Looks like we're decreasing it over time. Well, that's great. What's leading to that decrease? What have we been doing? What have we been putting in place that's helping us generate revenue and cash more quickly? Customer count. Looks like we had 95 new customers. Average monthly recurring revenue by customer. So, right, we're averaging up. This is great. So again, we're maybe in that Series A to Series B where we're doubling in size. How are we generating these customers? What's driving that business? How can we change our marketing strategies based on what we know? So this dashboard really gives you're understanding the health and performance of your business in real time. And it aggregates all of that contract data, and it's all in one place right here for you to look at. You also know that these are based off of your audited financial statements. You know that monthly, your accounting team has come in here. They've reviewed it. They've done a close process. They've closed the books. So you know that this information is not only accurate, but it's up to date to the minute. You can come here and look at this anytime you want. The CFO can log in at any time. I don't have to wait until a month-end reconciliation is done. So you're getting ready for the next board meeting and they ask you, hey, where is this churn coming from? What makes up this churn? Why is this happening? I can click right in here into my waterfall schedule. Let's take a look. So here we have it broken down for us, right? Here is our new monthly recurring revenue. This is what we were able to add on to our contracts. Looks like we had some renewals as well. We had a renewal downgrade. Let's take a look at this churn. What is making up this churn? We can click right in here and take a look. So if we scroll down through this page, I can see that it looks like it was 2 customers, but it's specifically in my small business sector. So why are we not able to give small businesses what they need? What is it about small businesses that we're just not meeting their expectations, and we have some churn over here? Let's take a look at our renewal downgrade. Where is this hitting us? Again, a small business. If we scroll down, it's actually a number of customers. Why aren't they renewing our products? And it also looks like it's affecting our mid-sized business. So how can we change our strategy, and how can we talk to sales about what we're doing when that renewal cycle hits? So this is really insightful information that I can come in here again. I can click in here anytime and look at this. I don't have to wait until month end. I don't have to ask, my staff accountant or my senior to come in here and put together a report for me that takes maybe a couple days out of QuickBooks if I wanted to look at something like this. And this isn't the only way that you can look at data, right? So you can slice and dice it a number of ways, which is one of the best things about Intacct. And we have a lot of dimensions that we can use to tag this data. So there's different dashboard views in here, right? I'm the CFO. I have different needs. I have different concerns about where my business is at. So if I come in here, I'm looking, I want to see my revenue with my expenses and my net income. How is that trending over time? So we're seeing here we have an uptick in revenue, which means, the more revenue we generate, probably the more expenses we're going to have, because we need to generate that business here. So over here, maybe as a CFO, I want to increase my services revenue. So I have a performance card here. It looks like it's up this year, which is great. And my labor costs go up, which kind of matches my trending graph here. But my margins are down. So I come down, I scroll here, EBITDA is up, so is net income, okay? Well, look at the story the data is telling me. Why is my profit margin down and my EBITDA margin down? This is something that, I can look into this and understand what story is this data telling me? What's driving down our margins? But again, now you have time to come in here and you have time to look at all of these different metrics, all of these different views. All right, back to the slides.
Hey, Mel.
Yes.
It's time for us to do a polling question. So
Right,
I'm going to launch that now. Okay, the question is, which SaaS metrics can you track using Sage Intacct's digital board book? Okay, give it another second. All right, I'm going to end the poll. Not surprisingly, I'm sharing the results now. Everybody chose all of the above. That was a layup. It may get harder. Okay, Mel.
Slides, please.
Coming right back at you.
Okay, so the second sign, which you probably could have guessed that we're leading to, too much Excel, right? Again, so we're talking about ASC 606 was designed to give us one single source of data, right? We want to house all those performance obligations under one contract. Maybe I have multiple Excel reconciliations that I have to put together a month in. Multiple financials also inside of Excel. I have so many spreadsheets, my eyes are growing twisted. I can't look at all this stuff, right? This extends potentially your close as well. Something that we could maybe close our books in 5 to 7 days, and we now have a close that's 10 to 15 days. This is a major problem that we see a lot from people coming from smaller ERP systems, looking to transition into Intacct. And also your billing. If I'm trying to have a different billing cycle than my revenue, I have to track that probably manually in Excel as well in a small ERP system. Next slide, please. So this is kind of when you're looking at QuickBooks or other systems, this is how you're tracking it now. I have to have an individual sales order per performance obligation. If I have a contract modification at some point within there, then I can't link that to my other performance obligations or my other sales orders through time. So, and not only are they scattered throughout my system, all my revenue postings are manual. All of my invoicing is manual. Potentially, you can have a really talented staff member or a senior, and they're spending all their time just trying to get together these reconciliations, trying to understand, did we bill? Do we need to bill? Where is that customer at? And that's where that churn comes in, and that's where customer dissatisfaction. We're not giving them what they need because we don't know what's going on with their business, because it's all over the place. All right, next slide, please. So here is what Sage Intacct can do that QuickBooks cannot. We have one single source of data, right? All of our performance obligations are in one place, housed under the same contract. And even if we start a contract and we need to add something on later, or maybe I need to debook something, I can go in there and I can just add it right in there. And this leads to a really streamlined and automated revenue schedules and automated billing, which is exactly what we're looking for, right? So Intacct creates those schedules automatically based on a template that I assign in the system, which I'm about to show you here in a second. So you can have independent billing and revenue schedules. I can bill quarterly and I can book my revenue monthly, and I don't have to track it. It's a set it and forget it mentality. So now I can spend time analyzing my data. Now I can spend time understanding the metrics of my customers and that lifetime value. All right, I'm gonna go hop back into Intacct and show you an example. Oh, we got one more slide here, I forgot. So for our contract scenario, our customer is Easy Services. They have a 1-year contract for the financial year of 2022 with a 1-year renewal option. The products that they purchase from us is a software subscription, some licenses. We have an implementation fee that we've synced with projects. So we're doing project billing and tracking, and some training courses. And then just for fun, we have a couple of contract modifications. So looks like in March, they added some support. And then in April, on the customer side, they had somebody quit. So we had to debook a user license. So let's hop into Intacct and see how this all comes together. All right. So here's our contract. It's in one place. You can see here my state is in progress. You even get a nice little total here at the top. What did we bill? What's the total? What's outstanding? As you can see here, and I also have an automated contract ID number, so I don't have to think about that either. I have my customer in here, bill to, ship to. If you have, sales tax implications, if that's something that your business needs, that can be set up within Intacct and synced to Avalara based on your ship to. I have my contract name here, and I come down here, and this is where I set the parameters of my contract, my start and end date, what are my payment terms, if we had a billing price list, or we're talking about that MEA, multi-element arrangement. This is also where you would tag that fair value price list here. And Intacct has something that a lot of these smaller ERP systems don't. We have something called dimensions, which is basically data tagging. And we can filter reports and views and a number of things based off of all these dimensions related to this contract. So again, slicing and dicing that data. I'll probably say that a few more times today, but this is super important, and there's a number of ways that you can look at your contract based on the data that you tag in the system. Looks like I have an employee tagged here. Maybe this employee sold this deal. So I can track commission reports based on this employee. If they decide to renew their contract, then I know how to calculate my commission accruals and what I owe that person. And right here, you see we have our project. And within projects, we also have tasks. I'm not going to get into the details of this today. That'll be in a later webinar where we go over projects. But again, all these different ways to tag data here and then use that data at a later point to filter reports. All right, down to our contract lines. So you see here, we have our main subscription. It's for the full year. And it looks like we're billing it monthly. And then I have my daily revenue recognition. And you can see right here, I can click into and look at my billing schedules. Everything is linked. I don't have to come up here and click and go to another place in the system. I can just click on my schedule and see, looks like I have billed the first 3 months. It's even check mark here for us. And not only do I have a link to my schedule, I can click right in here and look at my bill. Again, everything's synced. Everything's in one place. This is accurate real-time data. So here's my bill. Looks like we billed our subscription, our licenses, billed our training, and looks like we had some project hours that came through our staff timesheets. And again, we synced our project to our contract. So everything's all in one place. I don't have to send 2 separate bills to my customer. I can send it all in one place. Not only can I look at my billing schedules, I can look right in here and check out my revenue schedule. So here's this one. I have it posting daily with the monthly straight line. So it even gives me my rate here. So the number of days over the whole life cycle of this revenue schedule is 32.87. And it calculates it out for me based on the days in the month here. And I booked the first 3 months. You could even click in here and look at your entry if you wanted to. This is what I love about Intacct. It's all synced, it's all linked. So looks, here it is, pulled it out of my deferred revenue and dropped it into revenue. And a little bit here, we're gonna get into these topics of unbilled, billed, and paid, which is another ASC 606 requirement. All right, so let's take a look at one of these lines. Let's take a look at training, because we have a quantity-based revenue schedule. So let's pop this open so you can see additional details. So there's a lot of information that you can tag on here, right? I have my item, the start and end date. If you're multi-currency, you can drop a specific exchange rate date. GL posting. I can post this in advance of my contract start date if I so choose. So there's a lot of options here. We have a fixed price. Looks like we build it one time all up front. And then down here for my revenue recognition, I have quantity based. And what that means is I want to bill these all up front, but I give the customer, there's 3 training sessions. You can use them anytime you want throughout the year. And my revenue, how I want to recognize that revenue is one at a time. When you use a training session, that's when I meet that performance obligation. So that's what this quantity based is here. And again, you have your dimension tagging, and you can tag completely separate dimensions on each of your lines than you did for the overall contract, which is really cool. I think it's really unique here. And it's another way to slice data. And again, I can take a look here at my renewal. You can see that this training has not been renewed, but I do have a renewal contract set here. That's another thing about Intacct that's really great. So some of these lines, I do have them set to renew, but maybe, this training thing is a one-time. It's their first year, they're a new customer, it's a new subscription, and this is only for first-year customers. So I don't want to renew that line when I renew my contract. And then here are 2 contract modifications. And as you can see here, I set a different line start date. So and this is also add-on MRR. We were looking at that digital board book dashboard. These are where your MRR metrics are being driven from. It's tagged here right inside your contract line. Again, centralized location for all of your data. So I have my line start date different than the start date of my overall contract. I have my add-on MRR, right? Because I added it partway through the life cycle. We come down here. I don't have my rev rec starting until right the start of my line. And straight line, I build it all once up front, but it looks like we're doing monthly rev rec here. All right, and what are all these tabs up here? What do all of these do? Let's take a look. We have a renewal set. So everything is template driven and Intacct. So what's nice here is not only can I renew my contract, but I can tell that renewal to generate 60 days before the end date of my contract, and all the lines that I tell it to renew, or all the performance obligations, I want that set at a 5% increase. So we're going to take 12,000 plus an additional 5% on top of that. And again, this is a set it and forget it. You can even set it so that the customer, your internal team and your customer are notified when that renewal template generates in your system. So again, there's so many different ways to configure these contracts. So many different ways to do things. Let's take a look at our transaction history. So this is really busy, right? There's a lot going on here. I can come in here and I can set an as of date. Let's hit refresh. So this tracks everything that I do in this system here. There is a transaction for it. Can you look at all, essentially think of these as entries in your system, which we're going to go over in a little bit here. But all of these are entries. Can you imagine using a smaller ERP system that doesn't have the sophistication that Intacct has, booking all of these entries, all of these in and outs, having to manually calculate all this out? My face would be on my desk. I think I would be sweating bullets if I had to do this every month, right? So it's nice here. On create, we created our contract. Here's the creation of our contract lines. Here is that revenue, right? We're coming from our project. We can click right in here. Again, everything is linked. This is everything that I build right here. These are my revenue entries. I can click in here and I can take a look at it, which is really nice, right? Oh, this is on my bill. What does my bill look like? Let's take a look. We already looked at this, but again, everything is linked, which is really nice here. You can, there's also specifically just a billing transaction history. So if you want to come in here and say, when did I bill? What did I bill? They're all right here instead of having to go through this large thing here. Another thing that's great, if we come up to more actions, you can view your audit trail, right? So it doesn't tell us a lot here, but I can look at when it was modified, when it was added, what did I do? So that's a nice little piece there too. Okay. Back to the slides.
One polling question coming up. Found the right button. Okay, let's look at this one. Okay, Sage Intacct is compliant with which of the following accounting standards? I think everybody's going to get this one pretty easily. All right, I'll give it another second. Yes, that is the answer. All of above. I'll share the results. Good call. All right, Mel. I'm going back to the slide deck.
Okay, so your last sign is, GAAP, ASC 606, and IFRS compliance. The good news here is that you can't not be compliant when you go with Sage Intacct. The compliance is literally built into the system. It was designed to meet these obligations and meet these requirements. So that's one of the nice things about it. And one of the big things is not only when are we meeting these performance obligations and deep bundling with multi-element arrangement, but the unbilled, billed, and paid factor, which now creates, you're going from booking one revenue entry a month per product to 3, right? For unbilled, billed, and paid. So then this creates an automatic waterfall for us into the system, and we have complete visibility into when was this recognized? Is this recognized revenue billed? Has the customer paid us yet? All right, so I'm gonna hop back into Intacct here. Okay, so we're back in here. So I purposely didn't go over this. This journal balances tab, this is my favorite tab in the contracts module because we can take a look at how these buckets shift. So let's look at 0101 2022 and see what our contract looked like. So here, everything's in our unbilled. Again, these are clickable links. So if I want to see what happened here, everything's deferred. So here's all my contract lines sitting in, and we're going to go over a GL report in a minute. This is going to make more sense. But this is another nice feature too. I can come in here at any time and take a look at what my contract looks like based on transactions that I booked against this contract. So as of 1/31, it looks like we moved a bunch of things into build. We recognize some revenue. You can also scroll down and look at each line individually. What's my subscription line doing? How are my licenses? What are they doing? Have we been paid yet? Which is a really cool feature here. It really breaks this information down. And when I said you can't not be ASC 606 compliant, here's why. So how Intacct knows how to move all of these things around is based on a configuration that we have to set up. I know that this looks really busy, a little bit cross-eyed here, but basically what we have to do and why this becomes really cumbersome in a smaller ERP system like QuickBooks or Xero is not only do we have to have for receivables, deferred revenue, and sales revenue, we have to have unbilled, billed, and paid, but we also need to have unbilled, billed, and paid by our product groupings, which is what you see here. So all of my subscriptions products, all of my services, right? Can you imagine making entries to all of these accounts? What do we have? 7 accounts per category here. That would be a lot of entries if we tried to replicate this in QuickBooks or Xero. This would drive me crazy. So basically this posting configuration tells Intacct what to do here, and it automatically books those entries. You just have to generate invoices and you have to generate your revenue schedules. So it's a set it and forget it, tell it what to do, push the generate button, and you're good to go. So let's take a look at that waterfall effect in our ledger here. Oops. Pull this over. All right, so there is a lot going on here. So I think I have this filtered for the month of January. So let's take a look down here. The first thing that happens, right, is we come in here and this is all booking it for us, right? I didn't book any of these entries. The system did it based on that configuration that I just showed you, which is really nice. So it comes in here and we have to have our unbilled accounts receivable, right? And it's booking the ins and outs here. And we even have this broken out. Here's our subscriptions. Here is our services, right? So here is the full deferral of that. And as we build these 2 items, so remember this line here was our software subscription and we're billing it monthly. So here's the monthly, and that pulls it up. We come scroll up to accounts receivable. Here are all of our values up here. And this one here is coming from that project billing and tracking from those staff timesheets that we entered for the month of January. And then down here, the same concept is happening with deferred revenue and sales revenue. It's moving around all of these buckets. Here's the 2 deferrals here. And then we see some ins and outs. And we pull up that contract revenue out of our deferral. And again, this is separated out. We have our subscriptions, we have our services, and we can just come in here and look at this activity and look at the story that the system is telling us. I don't have to think about booking all of these entries. And then down here, we see some revenue action, right? Pretty neat, pretty awesome. And here's another thing too, a forecasting, right? So we have to, especially for disclosures with ASC 606, there's a number of audit disclosures. The bigger you get, the more disclosures you have. What's our revenue down the pipeline? Like what revenue are we expecting to receive that we haven't yet? That's a big disclosure. So we have forecasting schedules. I have it filtered for the contract that we just looked at as of 1/31. So you can see here, we already booked revenue for February and March. So this is what we have, or sorry, billing. This is what we have coming down the pipeline for billing. This is when we expect to receive payment from the customer. So that payback in months, obviously we can look at it, we can look at it by industry, we can look at it by customer, we can look at it by entity. There's a number of ways that we could be filtering this specific report. Our revenue forecast. What are we going to be able to recognize? What is our sales revenue going to look like over the next 12 months? And these all come from those automatic waterfall entries, right? So again, this is very much a set it and forget it. There's very few manual things that you need to do. Once you set your contract up, you set it up, you set it to go, you assign the how for the performance obligation. How do I want to bill? How do I want to recognize revenue? And then the only thing you have to do after that is generate those 2 different schedules, and everything flows through in the system very nicely for you, very neatly. All right, back to the slides.
Okay, Tom, can you see that?
Yes, I can. Thanks. I was on mute there for a second. So Mel has covered a lot of very specific requirements and solutions for SaaS accounting that are driven largely by ASC 606, but also by other GAAP requirements. But in a bigger picture, we want to talk about just preparing to have the accounting platform that you need. And it's not all just the financial piece. So having integrated systems is key. And in the case of enterprise sales, you're going to have a sales team that is probably using something like Salesforce, and being able to reduce the friction of that sales process into the setup of contracts and the recognition of revenue is going to really increase the revenue per transaction as you move forward. And it's not necessary at different stages of the growth to have, especially in the early stages, to have all of these things, but to know that you've got a roadmap and that you're putting in a foundation for your accounting platform that has the plumbing to connect these elements as you get larger volume, more complexity. So, for instance, the contract-based billing that reduces that churn is one thing that Mel went into some detail on there, and managing that end-to-end revenue cycle. So keeping your obligation revenues in line with the GAAP requirements, especially in multi-element arrangements, but also enabling automated billing, as Mel showed us, and getting that real-time information that you can actually rely on. We took a quick look at the audit trail that's generated, and as Mel said, with more automation and a template-driven process like we see in Sage Intacct, we have it's almost impossible to not be compliant with the rules because they were built into the system. And that means you don't need to use spreadsheets or other systems and dashboards to pull it together. And you know that when you present numbers that don't jive from different systems or from spreadsheets, that erodes investor confidence, and we don't want any of that, right? So having it all in one system, like what we're seeing here today, is a key thing to focus on for your future as you're growing, to pull all that stuff into a single source of truth. And that in turn enables that ability to forecast, plan, and be ready to speed up your quote to cash processing and get your pricing right. Next slide. So to recap today, I'm not going to go through all these terms, but we did see what the issues are with not having time to analyze, with having too many spreadsheets and spreadsheet tabs and different sources of truth and granular calculations that need to be made to be compliant with GAAP, with IFRS, with ASC 606. So, and then we just went over some critical elements to look for as you're building that SaaS accounting platform. That's you, Kevin.
Okay, so if you out there are experiencing some of the challenges that we've discussed today, then please reach out. We can help you evaluate the Sage Intacct solution for your particular situation and see if there's a fit. Now we're going to go to our last polling question, and then we'll do some Q&A. So last polling question. There we go. So what would you like to see in the next Sage Intacct for SaaS webinar? We've listed out contracts with project billing. There's usage billing concept. You want to see more about multiple element arrangements, maybe even take a deeper dive into the contracts configuration and setup. There's some insights there, or maybe some CRM integration thoughts. Okay, I'll give it a couple more seconds here. Looks like the multi-element arrangements are in the lead. Okay, I'll end it there. Yep, looks like most people wanted to see the multi-element arrangements. For whoever entered other, please reach out and let us know what that other topic might be, and we'll see if that makes sense for our plan here. All right, thank you very much. I'm going to stop sharing, and then we're going to go to some Q&A. And if you have a question you'd like to have us take a crack at it, enter it in the Q&A portion. All right, got one came through. What is the implementation timeline for Sage? Well, generally that's going to be in the 8 to 12 week time frame, but of course, you know, your specific circumstances may make that vary a bit, and that's certainly part of our discovery and evaluation process. Okay, there's another one
Kevin,
coming in. Yes.
I have a question. So maybe contracts is down the road for me, but I'm not quite ready. Maybe I want to do order entry. Is it possible to do digital board book with order entry?
Yeah, well, that's a good question, Mel, and absolutely it is. And then if your business changes and progresses and you need that more granularity that the full contracts brings, then you can upgrade at that time. It's a good question. There's one more here. The system handles a lot with SaaS. How difficult is it to learn? Well, our implementation includes all the training that you'll need to be successful. Plus, there's great help within the system itself, and there's some other training courses you can take. And also beyond that, of course, we're here to support you during the implementation and, of course, post go live. So
and there's the Sage Intacct community that has lots of discussions about specifics for different industries, and also information about localized customer meetups.
Absolutely.
So that's really helpful.
Another good point. Okay, give it another second or more here to see if there's any more questions coming through. All right, that looks like a wrap. Thank you, folks, for joining us today. We really appreciate it, and stay tuned for new topics and webinars around this subject in the future. Thank you, and have a great day.